The Supreme Court's always been a political institution, but it's really the last 60 years, the post-World War II era, that the court's become so ideologically charged. And what happened, really beginning with the Warring Court, is that the court began to get very closely and intimately involved in civil rights and liberties disputes that have a really profound impact on American society. Now, what's different today is that this is the first time in about the last 60 years that we can sort the justices by their partisanship.
So gestational diabetes is diabetes that is either first detected during pregnancy or develops for the first time during pregnancy. It's the most common maternal complication of pregnancy, so higher than any other complication that could occur when you're pregnant, like high blood pressure, for example. Women who are diagnosed with gestational diabetes, it'll go away when they have their baby, but afterwards they're at 7-fold increased risk for developing type 2 diabetes, which is a chronic condition, the biggest risk factor for cardiovascular disease, and we have no cure for type 2 diabetes. So it's a harbinger, really, an omen of your future risk of diabetes.
In other countries, teenage sexuality is primarily seen as an issue of relationships, of love. In the Netherlands, which I've studied, one well-known sex education program is called Long Live Love. And if you anchor adolescent sexuality in the context of love and relationships, oftentimes it becomes less fraught, less dangerous than it is in the United States, where adolescent sexuality is often seen as a matter of raging hormones that affect the individual.
Well, the climate changes we could expect over the Northeast U.S. In the near term are primarily warming. The climate's warming due to human activities. We can also expect an intensification of the hydrological cycle, more extreme precipitation events. In some areas, less precipitation, drier, but in the Northeast, more precipitation, extreme events. Also, a lengthening of the growing season, contraction of the frozen season, and then sea level rise. Sea level is rising, and it will continue to rise in the near term, and that will probably continue for quite a number of centuries, given the warming we've experienced over the past several decades.
The second is some of my research shows that the use of deadly force is particularly likely to be high when people act in situations when they're feeling incredibly angry or incredibly afraid. Emotions like anger and fear increase the use of deadly force. So the more we can raise awareness and make police officers or law enforcement officials more generally act in ways that reduce negative emotions, especially anger, is likely to reduce bias in policing.
Well, the scientific research has shown that exposure to the pollution that comes from traffic both causes asthma in some children and also causes asthma attacks. So the research with my colleagues has found for the very first time that in Los Angeles in 2007, there were 27,000 children who developed asthma because of exposure to this pollution. And this has really big impacts on the economy. In that year alone, it was about $500 million in Los Angeles County.
The mid-2000s, and especially after 2008, there was just rampant precarity, unemployment, even post office jobs now don't have hardly any full-time employees. It's all sort of short-term contract work. And so this has really affected people's sense of the future and what's possible. And so when I first started doing my field work in the mid-90s, demographers were calling for an increase in birth rates for young people to have babies. There was a lot of fear about there wouldn't be enough people to work later on, and now that's really silenced because there just aren't jobs for young people.
On the other hand, the arsenic compounds that we're finding in rice have the potential for considerable harm, because there's at least 2 carcinogenic compounds that we're finding in rice. And it's not just our research group here. There are groups around the world that are reporting the arsenic concentrations.
Most obvious to us are changes in how much people sleep as we grow. So infants and young children get the most amount of sleep, and older adults tend to get less sleep than they did as young adults. But the quality of sleep is changing as well across the lifespan. So infants and young children also get the most of the deep, rich sleep stages like slow wave sleep and REM sleep, and older adults tend to get less and less of these sleep stages as they age. And work in our lab has shown that these deep, rich sleep stages like slow wave sleep and REM are important for maintaining cognitive function and memory ability. And so we see that this function is greatest in infants and children, and it gets weakened for older adults.
I started my work doing more interview-based research focused on women's growing up stories, but I realized after a while that using something like digital storytelling allows for multiple purposes to come through, and that is we can use it as a data collection method to write notes around the activities that are going on in the workshop. We can also, though, use those stories, and the participants can use those stories to talk about their experiences and for advocacy and outreach purposes. And third, it's just a lot of fun through creativity and connection and social support that people gain through those workshops. People come away enjoying the activity.